calling plays against the team that fired him last year. And so this sets up as an interesting storyline for Sunday night's matchup between the Giants and Browns. Jason Garrett ruled out of that game, the Giants offensive coordinator, and Freddie Kitchens, the former Browns head coach, now will be calling plays against the team that fired him.
The plot thickens. Schefter, even a writer as good as you could not have written that story.
Well,
Meanwhile, let's
you're a writer
hurry
that
up.
good, Greeny. You could.
We've got Sunday. They have between them the fourth best combined winning percentage of any matchup this late in the season in the Super Bowl era. But wait, there's more. The two of them are combined, or both are, 36-9 over the last 3 seasons. That is tied for the best record in the NFL. But the big questions are all about Drew Brees. He has been designated to return to practice. But head coach Sean Payton said Brees still has a ways to go in his recovery from 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung. So the good news is we have Adam Schefter with us live this morning. Again, so those feel like two very different pieces of information. He's active or available to come back and play, but the coach says he still has a ways to go. So, Schefter, what is the latest?
Well, the answer is that he does have a ways to go, Greeny. And a lot of times, teams will bring players off the IR list to begin to ramp them up and acclimate them to what's ahead. And I think here, the Saints want to get back Brees, but they don't want to rush him along from the 11 fractured ribs and the punctured lung. And in this particular case, they've been pretty clear about the fact that they're not going to bring him back before he's ready. They're not going to bring him back before they believe he's got full range of motion in that shoulder right now and in that arm with that rib area being tender. And so, as it is, it certainly sounds like Taysom Hill is tracking to start Sunday's game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're getting Brees ready for a future matchup, maybe even on Christmas Day, the next time they play after playing Kansas City.
Yes, and you told us an hour ago that it would be Hill. The expectation is it would be Hill and not Jameis Winston, as we discussed yesterday. But I want everyone to hear this. Sean Payton, after talking about the Brees injury, then was asked about the Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill of it all, and he had some very fascinating comments. Listen to this.
There aren't many places in free agency where you can go to a team and have a pretty good bet that that quarterback like Drew is going to be playing in his last year. You're going to look for that opportunity to sometime be a starter. He's going to have that opportunity the minute Drew leaves, and both he and Taysom know that. I feel like our next quarterback's in the building.
I feel like our next quarterback is in the building. Now, that, of course, isn't a commitment, but it certainly is not something I was expecting to hear him say. Taysom Hill is in the building. Jameis Winston is in the building. Louis Riddick, as a team builder yourself, when you hear Sean Payton say that, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, Sean is usually very, very direct and very forthright as far as what he is seeing in his football team, what he's seeing in individual players, and what his plans are going forward. And so, I don't know which guy necessarily he's talking about, but I tell you this, I mean, if you're Jameis Winston, although you're obviously disappointed that you're not playing this year, and Taysom, Hill is at the controls, you have to be optimistic over the fact that Sean is saying, hey, look, I think we have our long-term answer here in the building, and how that plays out remains to be seen. But by no means and by no stretch of the imagination, if I'm Jameis Winston, am I thinking I am out of this? And look, it's hard, especially in a pandemic-type year where you haven't really had the chance to really learn the intricacies of this offense, to surpass someone who's already been in this system like Taysom has been, regardless of what you think about their pure natural abilities as a passer. It's still tough. But I tell you this, if you're going to go somewhere where you're going to really try and take your game to the next level, there's no better place than to go to New Orleans with Sean Payton sitting behind Drew Brees. So I still think that the upside is all still there, and the sky's the limit for Jameis Winston within this program.
Yeah, Nick, you and I think were on with me the day that this was announced, that Winston was going to New Orleans. And I remember my reaction immediately was, this is the best thing that could happen to him. He takes the baton and runs with it when Drew Brees steps into the broadcast booth, as we all expect to happen at the end of this season, which is why I've been surprised with the way it has gone so far this year. What is your sense of it, Nick, as you watch it?
Yeah, I mean, it tells me that Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback of the future there, not Jameis Winston, because we saw what happened last year when they had a quarterback who they believed in as a backup, Teddy Bridgewater. When Drew got hurt, they put Teddy Bridgewater in. And then to compound the issue for Jameis Winston, He signed a 1-year deal with them, so he's going to be a free agent again, having not played any significant downs in the league with very little leverage in this past season. And I guess the Saints are potentially going to re-sign him and then make him the starter. It doesn't seem to make sense to me for Jameis Winston. It seems like a vote of confidence in Taysom Hill, if anybody.
How should we interpret it, Schefter? We were all fascinated by that comment. And again, for those who weren't with us yesterday, we spent a lot of time on this show talking about the idea that maybe Jameis would be better suited to go up against Kansas City this weekend than Taysom Hill based on some of the limitations. Doesn't appear it's going that way now. But maybe that was why I was particularly interested in it. How should we interpret those remarks from Peyton?
Now, I don't think Jameis Winston was ever in the conversation to start Sunday against Kansas City. And again, I think it was not an easy decision for Sean Payton to make going back a few weeks ago. Once he decided Taysom Hill, that was the guy he was going to ride. Now, that's not a reflection of how they feel about Jameis Winston, because I can tell you that the people in that organization are really impressed with him and really like him and still believe he has the chance to be their quarterback of the future. But again, Taysom Hill is under contract next season to the Saints at a relatively friendly quarterback cap number. And so they have a quarterback in place if Taysom plays well enough. And if you're Jameis Winston, after a year in which you haven't played very much, you need a situation where somebody's going to give you an opportunity. I'll give you a place that makes a lot of sense right now. Cincinnati, which will have Joe Burrow coming back. You don't know whether he'll be ready for the start of the season. Jameis needs to play and impress people. He needs an opportunity, but he needs an opportunity where he might be free after that year because nobody is going to give him the contract he's looking for this offseason. A situation like that would make a lot of sense. We'll see whether it even gains any traction or legs, but that makes some sense to me. As it is right now, the Saints are very happy with Taysom Hill, but that doesn't mean they couldn't make the decision, okay, after seeing Taysom Hill this season, you know what? Maybe we are better off going with Jameis Winston in the future. I think it's still being answered and still being written.
It's going to be a fascinating thing. I mean, Jameis Winston, we should bear in mind, was the #1 pick in the draft not all that long ago and threw for 5,000 yards last year, albeit with all of those interceptions. We'll see where that plays out. Meanwhile, Schefter, I am being told that you have some news from moments ago from the New York Giants. What can you tell us?